Hello and welcome to TVS Correspondent, the show where we take a look at what's happening in the US and around the world. I am Radzi Ahmad, and with me is our correspondent for the United States of America, who is now in Washington, D.C., Alfian Zaini. Alfian, it's great to have you here.
It's great to see you again too, Radzi.
It's great to see you too. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about the COVID-19 situation in the US. We have received reports from the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that more than 4,100 people have been hospitalized or died due to COVID-19 in the US, even though they've been fully vaccinated. The new data also showed 750 fully vaccinated people have died after contracting COVID, but the CDC noted that 142 of those fatalities were asymptomatic or unrelated to COVID-19. The CDC also received almost 4,000 reports of people who have been hospitalized with breakthrough COVID infections, despite being fully vaccinated. Alfian, could you shed some light on what these numbers mean for the effectiveness of vaccines?
Right, Radzi. Well, that is to be expected. According to Dr. Paul Offit, top advisor to the FDA, the vaccines aren't 100% effective, even against severe disease. They are a very small percentage of the 600,000 deaths.
Well, let me play the devil's advocate here. Some people, they might have doubts about getting vaccinated when they hear about this. I mean, if you can still get infected, even if you're fully vaccinated, they might think, why bother?
It's important to note that breakthrough cases are COVID-19 infections that bypass vaccine protection. They are very rare and many are symptomatic. The vaccines are highly effective but don't block every infection. Pfizer and Moderna's phase 3 clinical studies found that their two-dose regimens were 95 and 94% effective at blocking COVID-19, while Johnson & Johnson one-shot vaccine was found to be 66% effective in its studies. All three, however, have been found to be extremely effective in preventing people from getting severely sick from COVID. Also, I like to refer to an analysis by the Associated Press in which they found that nearly all COVID-19 deaths in the US now are in people who weren't vaccinated. It is a demonstration of how effective the shots have been and an indication that death per day, which is now down to less than 300, could be practically zero if everyone eligible got the vaccines.
Well, that's really interesting. Could you elaborate on that analysis by the Associated Press?
Of course, the analysis of available government data from May shows that breakthrough infections in fully vaccinated people accounted for fewer than 1,200 of more than 853,000 COVID-19 hospitalizations. That's about 0.1%. And only about 150 of the more than 18,000 COVID-19 deaths in May were in fully vaccinated people. That translates to about 0.8% or 5 deaths per day on average. That means the overall trend that emerges from the data echoes what many healthcare authorities are seeing around the country and what top experts are saying.
Well, those figures are very encouraging indeed and proves that getting vaccinated is one of the best ways to overcome this pandemic. That's for all the anti-vaxxers out there. Alfian, very quickly, could you give us updates on the number of Americans vaccinated and correlating deaths?
Sure. The CDC said about 63% of all vaccine eligible Americans, those 12 and older, have received at least one dose, and 53% are fully vaccinated. Deaths in the US have plummeted from a peak of more than 3,400 a day on average in mid-January, only 1 month into the vaccination drive. While vaccines remain scarce in much of the world, the US supply is so abundant and demand has slumped so dramatically that shots sit unused. Although I want to note that preventable death will continue with unvaccinated pockets of the nation experiencing outbreaks in the fall and winter. Experts at the University of Washington said modeling suggested the nation would hit 1,000 deaths per day again next year. In Arkansas, which has one of the lowest vaccination rates in the nation, with only about 33% of the population fully protected. Cases, hospitalizations, and death are rising. So it's really sad to see someone get hospitalized or die when it can be prevented. Razzie.
Y- Yes, it's very sad indeed. And it goes to show how important it is to get educated and informed on these issues, Alfian.
It's interesting that what could drive some vaccine skeptics to change their minds. The stories of unvaccinated people dying may convince some people they should get the shots, but young adults, the group least likely to be vaccinated, may be motivated more by a desire to protect their loved ones. And a majority of unvaccinated COVID-19 patients express some regret for not being vaccinated. That's a pretty common refrain that doctors in the US are hearing from COVID-19 patients nowadays.
Well, as the old adage goes, prevention is better than cure. We'll be right back on TVS Correspondent, where we'll take a look at the Delta variant of COVID 19 that is rampaging around the world right now. Don't go anywhere. Right, we're back on TVS Correspondent with more on COVID 19. Alfiana, I'd like to talk about the Delta variant of COVID 19 that's been making the headlines recently. Anthony Fauci, the director of the US National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and chief medical advisor to the US president, says the Delta variant is the greatest threat in our fight against COVID 19. Why is that, Alfiana?
Razi, the Delta variant is a highly transmissible variant that has spread to nearly 100 countries around the world, including the US. The WHO said Delta is faster, it is fitter, it will pick off the more vulnerable more efficiently than previous variants. And therefore, if there are people left without vaccination, they remain a further risk. They also said Delta is becoming the dominant variant worldwide. In the US, it currently makes up 20% of new cases, up from 10% last week, and likely to become the dominant variant soon. So it's understandable why Fauci had major concerns for this variant, Razi.
How much more transmissible exactly is the Delta variant? And more importantly, is it more deadly?
Well, Razi, according to the CDC, the Delta variant seems to be around 60% more transmissible than the Alpha variant. The Alpha variant, which is currently the dominant variant in the US, is 50% more transmissible than the original virus. Delta is spreading faster in US counties where less than 30% of residents have been fully vaccinated. Whether it is more deadly, Fauci said the Delta variant is associated with an increased disease severity as reflected by hospitalization risk. The data he is referring to suggests that a person is twice as likely to be hospitalized if infected with the Delta variant compared with the Alpha variant. Still, while it's established that Delta is more transmissible compared with other variants, not much is known about whether it causes more severe disease. But the good news is Fauci said that vaccines will likely be effective against Delta.
How effective are we talking here?
Efficacy rates decrease slightly for the Delta variant, with studies indicating 88% efficacy against the Delta strain after 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. Data isn't available yet on the effectiveness of many other vaccines against Delta, but Fauci said that Moderna's vaccine, which has similar makeup to Pfizer's, would likely have a similar efficacy against the Delta variant. Still, no data has been released on Moderna's or Johnson & Johnson's response against the Delta variant. AstraZeneca and Sinovac, that's a different story. A new study by Scotland researchers found that AstraZeneca vaccine is less effective than Pfizer on the Delta variant. Meanwhile, Chinese researcher Feng Zijian said that antibodies triggered by 2 Chinese COVID-19 vaccines are less effective against Delta, but shots still offer protection, though he didn't name the 2 vaccines.
But still, I would assume that any vaccines of any brand would offer you better protection than no vaccine at all.
Oh, that's exactly right. I couldn't agree more. Fauci encouraged people in the US to get vaccinated in order to be protected against the Delta variant. He said high vaccination rates will reduce the chances that the variants have time to mutate and produce even more transmissible or more severe variants. I'm more worried about countries such as in Africa, where less than 5% of the population is vaccinated, as Delta poses the biggest threat to these countries with little access to vaccines, Radzi.
We can only hope and pray that these countries get the vaccine supply they need, because right now India is also reporting the emergence of the Delta Plus variant, another variant of concern, which is likely even more transmissible and even more dangerous. But that's a topic for another day, as unfortunately we have ran out of time. Alfian, it's been a pleasure and I appreciate the time.
Likewise, Radzi. Take care, everybody.
Stay tuned to TVS Correspondent next week with Alfian Zaini, and as always, thanks for watching. Stay safe and bye-bye.
Bye bye.